2, 1. All right, welcome everybody to Omaha Data Science Academy class. The class is um, cloud engineering and APIs and data science. This is our second lecture where we focus specifically on the role of APIs and data science. And Jeremy Bergman, the instructor for this Omaha Data Science Academy class. Okay. So to cover how this class is structured, this is from the syllabus, is we do hour one of introducing the new topic or concept. Hour two is more of a deep dive or almost hands-on, where we'll start working with a specific type of API. And then the hour three, this will actually be a hands-on exercise that leads us into homework one, where we'll install Postman and we'll do some hands-on work, so data engineering work to gain those skills. So our number one is really a higher level overview of understanding APIs and their roles in data workflow. And then there are a number of different types of APIs. I cover the most popular ones, and they all have different uses or use cases. So you'll be able to see some of the different reasons why you would use like a GraphQL API versus a REST API or webhook API. Second hour, we'll focus on REST APIs for the rest of this class. The majority of the data you get in data science, you get them from REST APIs. It has like a simple request and then response interface. And that's usually how you get big data sets off of servers. Anyway, it's probably, whenever I do engineering work, it's probably about 90% of the APIs I use. So we'll focus on those. The skills will be somewhat applicable to other REST APIs also. Once you get familiar with using APIs and you're able to look at the programming libraries and everything, you'll be able to get a feel for the other ones too. But for the remainder of this class, we'll focus on REST APIs. And then, like I said, hour three, we will build on our skills. I won't assign homework this week until we're fully set up with everything. So that also includes what we started with setting up resources in the first class, and then the software and everything that we're doing here with REST APIs in the second class. So hopefully we'll get to that and be able to spend a lot of time on it and ensure everybody's set up for success for the rest of the class, because the things that we're setting up in the first two class, that's what you will use for the exercises and homework and final project for the remainder of the class. So we'll spend some time making sure everybody's can do that before we assign homework. All right. Class two objectives. So like we said in the first hour, the first topic is just what are our APIs? So that's always an important question to ask. There's so many acronyms in IT. I'm sure John C is super familiar with it, John Collard, having worked in it for 30 years. But APIs, well, acronyms are tossed around a lot in business, but especially IT. So we'll learn more about what is an API and what it's used for and how we can use it in the various types. The importance of them in data science, they can be a couple-fold as far as you can deploy data science projects through APIs, or you can connect to other machine learning or AI type APIs, or you can get data from them. So there are a number of reasons why they're important. So there are various types of APIs and use cases. We'll cover that. And then working with REST APIs, request and response processes. So we'll spend some time really getting our hands on the REST APIs and really getting a feel for how they work. And then just a general process that you use whenever you're working with a new API, as far as reading documentation, identifying the resources or endpoints, accessing them, and then sending the REST API request and receive response, and then the data that you get through it. You have to do a little bit of work to be able to use it, but that's your general process, and we'll go into that in detail. That'll be the second hour of the class. Actually, I'm going to scoot this so you can see. Yeah, it's probably all right before. We'll just go with that. All right. So API is defined. That's the ultimate question, like what is an API? And then, eventually talking about why is it useful in data science. So in defining an API is short for Application Programming Interface. So this name somewhat describes like what its job is. So the intent of these is to provide a service on the internet that allows different software applications to communicate with each other. So give you an example. I don't know if anybody's used a tool like Zapier to be able to connect like your email to, maybe it's actually the other way around. You're using like a CRM or something like that, a marketing campaign or customer relationship management tool. Somebody puts in a new message and then it'll alert you by email. So APIs, there's actually two APIs behind that. One from the CRM system, one to your email that's being connected to each other behind the scenes to be able to do that. So the point of them is to connect different applications to each other. This can also include you connecting Microsoft Azure to a web service to get data or connecting Python to it to get data. So it's really a way for systems to be able to communicate and interact with each other. And oftentimes they're passing, data or some type of programming object back and forth between them to be able to do that. So kind of like the pipes of the internet or wires behind the scenes that connect the systems. For types of APIs, there are various APIs, especially depending on the use cases and with unique characteristics. With the unique characteristics, those define the use cases, whether it's real time or streaming, or it needs to be tightly defined like a SOAP API. RESTful APIs are really good for data transfer, which we'll see in a second, but there are various types of APIs depending on what you need them to do and how these are connected to data access and integration. These APIs enable seamless data access and integration across diverse platforms and systems. So this is really important because oftentimes systems are built in different languages and they don't necessarily communicate with each other very well. These interfaces are made to be as standardized as possible to be able to send messages back and forth. So even though they're diverse, they're able to communicate each other because they're communicating the same way with each other. So that's like the seamless data access. They both know how to, it's kind of like they're speaking two different languages and the APIs allow them to speak the same language, translates and allow them to speak the same language so they can communicate with each other. I think that's a good way to describe it. And with data, and it helps with data access and integration between systems. The systems know exactly what they need and want, request, and what they give to each other. So the importance of APIs in data science, integration of AI-powered APIs. I briefly mentioned this a slide or two ago, but there are APIs that you can access that have AI models behind the scenes. And this allows you to incorporate them for enhanced and advanced analytics, machine learning, and natural language processing capabilities. So a good example of that is some of the Google Serve APIs we saw in the Google services, whether it's like the cognitive learning or their translate service. those are services, but they also have APIs that you can connect to. So if you build like a mobile app and you want a translate feature in it, you can connect your mobile app to that translate service, and then you have a AI in your on your phone. You can do a voice to text and then a translate. Even you can connect a couple AI services to it, and all of a sudden you have it without even having to build a model. So that's one of the important, one of the reasons why APIs are important. So that's one of the ways to think of it. The second way we talked about in lecture 1 is that you're starting to adopt a serverless architecture. So REST APIs are naturally serverless. They have servers behind the scenes, but the way you connect to them is serverless and on the internet. It allows for your connection from almost any platform, ensures scalability, reduced infrastructure management, so you don't have to have like a lot of complicated in-between infrastructure, and hopefully the cost efficiency that goes with that. And then finally, the expansion of the API ecosystems. So this is where data comes into place. So more and more people or companies are creating APIs to share data, and these API ecosystems are starting to get to be huge. So, and they continue to grow. So you're able to get diverse data sources from a wide array of information for analysis or insights. So we'll go through some examples, but some of these are just like sports websites. They produce all sorts of APIs for information on historical information on sports, like game scores, players, different stats. One of my favorites, of course, are a bunch of crypto type APIs that will give you like up-to-date prices and volumes and all sorts of information. Trying to think of a good ecosystem of data APIs. Facebook and Twitter have their own APIs where you can pull in data and user trends and things like that. That can be important in maybe marketing efforts that you're doing. And they just continue, like Facebook and Twitter or those social media platforms. They just continue to grow and grow their APIs and what they can give access to. The more people are finding out like that they can, that data is like the new gold, right? They say is, the new oil. They call it the new oil. Is that the more they find out that these companies find that they can profit from sharing this data, or other people can profit, the more and more of these expansions of data they allow people to have in their ecosystems to be able to do more and more and build more applications. So as a data engineer, it's actually really pretty exciting to be able to have the skills to be able to build either those type of applications or processes, or be able to integrate a new AI model into somebody's workflow or somebody's data science project. I love that part of development and programming, at least being able to create new things. It's it's sometimes taken as a boring profession, and it can be in some places, but that you work. But I think data engineering is really an opportunity to be creative with your problem solving skills, which is what I enjoy the most about it, and come up with new combinations of solutions. All right. So we covered the importance of APIs. So now we're going to talk about the different types of APIs. I listed API types, their use cases, their input and output formats. So basically, all of these services APIs, there will be some type of input that you send to the service, and then it produces some type of output. And then I have an example of each one. So SOAP APIs, these are traditionally like, these go the farthest back as far as historically. SOAP is like a protocol of communication between systems that goes back at least to the 1990s or earlier, but it's very strict standards and rules that govern the communication between systems. So that's why I say, and if two systems are very different from each other, at least they have those strict standards that say, this is like how we're going to communicate with each other. It's like speaking the same language at that point. The input-output format is XML. So XML is kind of like HTML, where you can define all your own custom tags and really, like, I don't know, that if you don't know about HTML, you have tags that you can define with, like, you can put text in them or links in them and everything else. You can create that with XML and define your own schema and then put all sorts of data within it. Example of that is Salesforce CRM. So I'm just going to click on that real quick to show everyone an example. So I've tried to embed links here. If you go back into the slides, you can click on some of these and read a little bit more. So it tells you how to use the Salesforce SOAP API. Oh, you can't, can you? Oh no. Yeah, let me share that whole screen. Hold on one second. Thanks for catching me there real quick. Stop. I'm going to share this whole screen so I can just drag everything over there for now. Share screen. We want to share the entire second screen. Okay, there we go. So we're back here with Salesforce. We'll find that these websites, they really want you to use their APIs, so they do a pretty good job of documenting them and telling you how to use it. Salesforce actually has a little learning objectives and course that you can take to be able to understand their API and how to use it. But you generate, so how you do this is that you generate a file that you're going to send to the API. You use the SOAP protocol to create, well, they have a little bit different process for it, but basically you create a file and you use the protocol to send it. And oftentimes on these websites, you have to create an account to do that and so forth. But this gives you some information about it. On how to use it. But especially with this one, it's based on Salesforce, and it's they have a learning section because I'm certain that they have strict standards that they use to communicate back or communicate to their API in their system. I haven't personally used SOAP APIs a lot, but it's not too much different than REST APIs in the sense that instead of an XML file that you send and receive, you're going to send a JSON file instead. So what RESTful APIs are, they say stateless, resource-based URLs. So what they mean by stateless is that it's always going to produce the same result, no matter what the state of the system is. No matter what the state of the system is, this REST API is always going to try to produce you like a consistent result. It's not dependent on the state. They have resource-based URLs. We'll see this shortly. But you're able to connect to the web through a URL and give it some parameters and send it a JSON message, and then it will return data in response. One of the ones I have worked with a lot is Box API. And it's working with Box API. Familiar with Box, it's a lot like OneDrive or what's the other really common drive? I can't. What's that? Yeah, it's store. Yeah, or Dropbox.
Dropbox,
Yeah, I'm like, it's a lot like Dropbox. It is a little bit. It is a little bit like Google Drive in the sense that Google Drive also has this type of API where you can do all sorts of operations, and they have endpoints for them. So you can do things with like, you can download files automatically. You can set permissions, folders, or delete folders programmatically. So it's really, the steps are really good for automation also. So if you click on one, what we mean, getting all sorts of error, I'm causing all sorts of problems here. All right. So what I mean by an endpoint is that, and that has a URL, is that there'll be a URL that you can connect to with a specific format and parameters. And if you do this programmatically, you send it a request in JSON format, and then it'll perform that operation for you and then return you some data and results. So like a GET, this would return you different information. Or this one actually returns all the items that are in your folder. And we'll see how this works in action here later on, but that's the idea of that behind that. GraphQL API types. This is a little bit more flexible than REST APIs. So like SQL, this is a query language for APIs that allow clients to request the data that they need. So it's more flexible in the sense that it doesn't just deliver you a set result. You can actually write a query. You can send it to the REST API. They'll connect the behind the scenes to database, and then it returns you the results. There are some of those. I think Meta has a Graph API, and they'll document that. They'll have all sorts of different things that you can pull, and then like examples of code that you can use to be able to get back information. Usually you send it the information by JSON. We'll look a little bit at JSON specification here, but it returns GraphQL queryable object. So what that means is that it'll send you back a programming object that you can get information out of. And we'll spend a little bit of time detail. So this Graph API, okay, so for all of our SDKs and products interact with the Graph API in some way, and our other APIs are extensions of the Graph API. So understanding how this works is crucial. So they have a little course on it, especially for people who are new. To have this type of resource is like super valuable. So like how you even get, how it's structured and how it works, the different endpoints, like we saw with REST. You can do batch requests for data, or to send multiple requests in one call. Handling errors, how you can resume uploads and so forth. I believe their graph API it's a Facebook social graph, so your closest friends and everything,
Hey,
or
Jeremy.
you communicate with the most because they like there's like all sorts of information reports that they capture about you. So you can do all this by HTTP. You get their access tokens and everything, so it gives you like a pretty good walkthrough of like what information you need to send it and everything.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I've noticed that there
Question?
is a extremely high, yes, I noticed that there is an extremely high correlation with you clicking on links and suddenly your voice getting really bad for a couple seconds.
Is it? I think these are loading slow. I think it's a connection.
Okay, just letting you know.
Okay. I'll keep that. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I'll let it load and then start talking. But thank you for that. I noticed that these are loading. I think it's connection related. Right. So I don't have too many more links here. I could probably go through these and let everybody else take a look at them. But WebSockets, they're real-time bidirectional communication. So this is like a direct connection with each other and you stay connected. It's usually for applications that are continuously transmitting data back and forth. So what these are best for are like streaming outputs, like YouTube's push notifications, or like streaming video or chat and things like that. So they probably also have a streaming video WebSocket also, but the push notification system is one that is constantly looking for new push updates. It's constantly connected, and then it looks for like new push updates to your phone. So where that would be probably useful, well, if you have the YouTube app, you would see that you get push notifications that way. That likely uses WebSockets to do that behind the scenes, right? So there's remote procedure calls. These are protocol that allows a computer program to execute a procedure on another computer server in a network. I won't get too wrapped up on this. This is mostly actually a Windows operating system thing. All client server applications on Windows operating system. So if you've ever used remote desktop, that actually uses RPC, um, web calls between systems to communicate with each other. I don't know if I've personally used it, but it's interesting to note that, and you could potentially use those to call different Windows services and stuff like that. Library-based APIs are like your most traditional ones. Um, everybody here is taking Python, right? So this would be like your software development kit or your libraries in Python that you'd install. Oftentimes, we'll even see with Box is that they will create their own um, software development kit or libraries to make communicating between systems or their APIs easier. So you don't have to write all the code for the API call. You can just call one of their functions with parameters. One of these is Azure Libraries for Python. So I've used this personally for Azure to automate a bunch of like uploads of data from like a remote computer over to the data lake. That's probably one of the biggest ones. They'll provide you libraries. There'll be like a data lake library that allows you to upload files to it automatically. So that way you don't always have to go into that computer every day and upload the files yourself. You can just have it run that program at a certain time and it'll go do it for you. So automation, like I mentioned before, is one of the big parts of having having that API interface. Webhooks is the other one. So this is for like near real-time communication. But how webhooks works, it's like WebSockets where they're constantly connected, but they only transmit information back and forth when an event happens on the system. So one of them would be Stripe. So Stripe's like the credit card little piece of hardware that you swipe and make payments, and they have like the payment system behind it. Every time that would swipe and a transaction go through, you could potentially build a webhook and then it'd send it to your email or whatever system, QuickBooks or something like that. It's a good way to interface between systems or get an alert when a transaction happens. So these are really, a lot of them are used, you could see, for various reasons, especially for programming, creating programming interfaces or integrations. The ones used for data science the most would be REST APIs, GraphQL, and there's some library-based APIs too that you could find on something like GitHub library that somebody's created, a library to go get data from census.gov or something like that. So you don't have to do all the work. Somebody's already done like a lot of the work to be able to like scrape data or get the data and process it for you. All right. Okay. So API integration and data science workflow. Let's see. So this is the processes of integrating APIs into work. So I think this slide was incomplete. I didn't finish it up. But the idea, we'll cover this more in depth on how to integrate these in the 7th lecture when we start to get really familiar with Azure from top to bottom. But Azure and Azure Data Factory has a lot of these connectors from these systems. It's like REST APIs, it has SAP from FTP sites and QuickBooks. What these really are right here are integrations to like the REST APIs in QuickBooks to be able to communicate with it and get certain information. Data Factory to be able to create that pipeline and automate it, and then load that data into something like a database, capture it for a data science workflow. So these actually have a lot of these built in, so you don't necessarily have to write your own code. It's like a visual interface that you can use in a data science workflow. So the other thing you can do is that you can write code like Python code, and you can implement it within Azure. But personally, I like it the most when something already exists. You don't have to write and maintain code. It's that you can just use those existing integrations. They probably work even more reliably than your own code because millions of people use it every day. So there's somebody like updating all these in the back. You don't have to worry about the code or constantly monitoring it. And sometimes you don't even have to learn that much about the API. You can just use the integration, and then it'll list the endpoints and things that you can do, and then say, just give me these accounts out of QuickBooks, or just give me all of the accounts that are updated as of yesterday or something, or all of our ledger transactions or something like that. So this is how it works in the data science workflow, and we are going to really focus on that in week 7 as we build all of our skills and we do our final project. API integration will be part of that. Or week 7, class number 7. Week 4, class number 7. I did start, I think I intended some of these to be at the end. Oh, no, I didn't. So what I was doing here is trying to show some of the more popular APIs in data science. So I've used census.gov a lot. That's why I mentioned it. It can really be kind of cumbersome itself to parse through government website and be able to get like exactly the data that you need. They do help with some of their APIs, but people also write libraries for certain things. Also, you can go to GitHub, download. You can download some Python code or and install a library, and it makes your life easier trying to get exactly what you need. I've done that a lot in the past for market research. So looking, overlaying demographics with scales and overlaying it on maps and stuff like that too. One example is we've used it with Esri Maps. So it's like a mapping software, and then you overlay demographics and sales. It'll tell you some like really interesting patterns, like who's the general person who's generally shopping at the store, how much traffic's going by. Um, what else did we do out of that? And that helped us place. I worked building a little bit of storage as to how I've used it in the past, but then we brought all that data together to say, where should we put new dentist office or oral surgery locations? So if you like data science, that's like the type of questions that you can answer, which is cool. Data engineering helps get all of this information and structure all that information. That's how it goes together. So one of the other ones I used for the SQL class, I got the COVID-19 data from Johns Hopkins. They do up-to-date simple records on like new cases and deaths and states and zip codes and stuff like that, so that you can plot them on a map or you can trend and keep track. There's Reddit API, so you can do some natural language processing from that. You can get some information, text information about that. Particularly good for natural language processing and types of the type of AIs like open AIs, which is like generative AI, probably uses. Oh, I am certain that it uses some Reddit data, but you can do that to create your own models too. Platforms, of course, you have the Google Cloud APIs. So you have the machine learning APIs, but you have all the APIs too that help you like upload the data lake and do things like that. And Azure is similar to that. And then with the AI and ML, you have all those platforms, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, or Google, they all have some versions of ML and AI APIs that you can use, pre-existing models that you can use. It's actually go ahead and take a look at one. I'll give it a second here to load, and I'll talk after that. They're having a party downstairs.
Yeah.
Saw lots of wine downstairs for anyone who wants to crash the party. There's a big social event at elevator today.
Not too
Yeah. Sorry about that, everyone. My connection dropped in the middle of talking about the Amazon machine learning APIs. Hopefully you caught part of that, but anyway, there will be a link in the slide that you can take a closer look. They have a lot of the common API services that Azure or Google Cloud does, but it's really neat that they provide these web services by REST. These are probably almost all REST API services to be able to just connect to like an existing machine learning algorithm or AI algorithm to be able to do stuff like image recognition or text transcription or translating foreign language and stuff like that. Like, what's cool about being an engineer or data engineer is that like the world's at your fingertips. Kind of neat way to think about it, I think. So I'll give it 7 o'clock. It's pretty good timing for a break here. In the second hour, we'll dive deep into REST APIs, but that's a pretty good overview of the different types of APIs and the purpose of it and how you use it in development and computer science, and then some of the more common APIs that you use in data science. So we'll take a break. We'll be back at. Let's come back at just after. Well, we'll come back at 7:15. That'll be good. So we'll give everybody almost 15-minute break. All right. See you then. All right, everybody, we're back. I grabbed water. I didn't grab any champagne from downstairs. That is a pretty full party down there. I forgot what it was
Yeah, there's no parking.
for. I have.
E-commerce and meetup.
Oh yeah, there's a meetup downstairs. I got the email for that today. Since I work with Nate, I use borrow some of his office space and we work on projects. I get the elevator emails along with it. I don't know the last time I went to a party like that. Maybe I'm getting older or something.
Mature.
Or if I had last, I have 3 girls, so I go home to that. 3 young girls, young ladies. One not so young. She's a sophomore in high school. All right, so we'll get started here on the second hour where we dive deeper, where we start to really dive deep into understand REST APIs and dive deep into it, and then at the end we'll really understand the different methods and the endpoints that can be used in REST APIs, and from start to finish, what's your general process of going out the API documentation, looking to see what type of data you need to send to the API, what kind of format and JSON format, how you request and receive data, and then how you parse that result and use it for data science workflow. So the first slide, go ahead and share my screen. Of course, you'll start to get to know my style because at the beginning of every new topic, or basically every new topic, I just start by defining it. So I think everybody can see the screen here. I'll go into presentation mode. If I can, I'm sharing the entire screen. Let me just share that window. Oops, one more time. Share. Let's just share that tab.
I was too happy to talk about REST API.
Too late in the day to talk about REST APIs.
No, I mean, he looks too happy to talk about it.
Oh, he's pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
He does a nice job. He does an even better job than me. So we'll play the video here in a second. So, no, it's like REST APIs. That's exciting. All right. So what is a REST API? So REST API is short for RESTful API. And it means like your stateless that's at REST API. So like we talked about, it always produces a consistent result, and it doesn't matter what the state of the system is. So it's an application program interface, an API that uses HTTP requests. So HTTP, like the web, like you do to get a website, to exchange JSON data via responses. So the input and output for REST API is a JSON format. And they'll talk a little bit about JSON format in here. We'll take a look at it also. But REST APIs, they all have the same like characteristics or anatomy. So they have an endpoint like we saw with the Box API. It'll be a URL and methods allowed to access or submit data to the server. That data will tell the REST API, that other server, what to do. Whether it's like creating a new folder or updating the name of a folder, or maybe you're just asking for some data like from the crypto API, you can say, give me Bitcoin information, like the current price of Bitcoin, and you'll send data to it to tell it that. There are 4 CRUD methods, so you may have learned about that. In SQL, it's create, read, update, and delete. I almost stumbled on it too because I'm like, create. So yeah, you can create a new, you can create new data or a new resource, they would call it, on the server. You do that by a post method. So you create the resource. You can read resources by get. Get's the most common when you're going out to an API to get data for a data science project. So you'd say, get me the Bitcoin information for the last 3 years, and then it return you that information in JSON format. You can so you can update an existing resource. So with like the Box API, you can rename an existing folder. That'd be like update. Or if you think of a database, you could also, if you're connecting to a database, it'd be like an update command on some existing record. So maybe you give it a user ID and you can change the name of it or something like that. And then you could delete an existing resource. So Box, you could delete a folder, or if it's a database, you could delete an existing record. So tying those together, the concepts with SQL and REST API, that's why REST APIs are popular in data science. Pretty simple commands that are very much related to data. So you'll often send headers along with the data response. So explain this. So email, sometimes you'll see headers, it'll be like to and from, and like the server information and stuff like that. It's usually hidden behind the scenes, but with a REST API request, sometimes you're sending some data behind the scenes, like you'll have like an API key or a developer key that's like a alphanumeric string of characters that you send to tell the REST API it's actually you. So we'll see an example of that. That's the most common thing that you put in headers. You can put other things in headers.
Is that like a safety?
Yeah, there'll be a security measure. And then data in the body or the message. So the data is like, you do one of those methods, the data really commands it what to do, like I was talking about. So like what data do you want, or what folder do you want to delete, or it can be any number of things. And those are usually pretty well documented in the REST APIs. We'll see that coming up. But for now, I'll let this dude go wild here talking about REST APIs. Let me make sure I do this right and focus on the right slide. Stop screen. I think what we want to do here is focus directly on the tab. Oops. I need to focus on this one that just popped up when I click that. So hold on 1 second. Could actually let that play on for a few seconds. 1 second. I'm just playing the commercials. Nobody has to listen to that. Say it knows all about me. Okay. All right.
Now let's say I'm a psychology student working on a paper about decision making.
I think everybody.
I can ask Grammarly.
Now we'll skip that.
Okay, now the TV.
Okay. Let me know if you can.
No.
we're going to go ahead and play and see what happens.
Welcome. Today I want to talk about what an API is and why it's important.
Okay. Yeah, now transcription's starting to be able to transcribe and section these off.
I love that. Small applications. In the least, so this is just.
And then it says most replayed. I'll play it here too. I'll mute ours so we can.
Are you talking to the entire class?
He muted himself so we can watch the video.
Okay.
All Sorry, I'm just making some comments for the people here. I could do that for the whole class, but they want internet. Or and I'm not on the same part of the video like you are. So I'm just giving everyone a minute to watch and just mentioning a couple things to people and sitting here in person. All right. Hope everybody found that video really is a really good description of REST APIs, especially the post and put methods and using endpoints and even authorization and seeing JSON format in action. That's just the best video I found, so wanted to share that with everyone. I'm going to go ahead and, now that we're familiar with REST APIs, move through the rest of these slides fairly quickly. They're just deeper dives into the different methods and in general, what's the process that you use to be able to go out to REST API documentation and then use the REST API for what you need it to do. So that way we can get to exercises and make sure everybody's set up here with the last hour of class. Right. So I need to share the screen before I get too far into it. Let's go ahead. And share. I want to share it as a presentation though. I'm doing this presentation, 1 second. Present. Just do that. There we go. I like that much better. Okay. All right. So API operations, we have get, put, post, and delete. These are HTTP methods that are commonly used for credit card operations like we talked about. They provide a standardized way for clients to interact with server-side data, enable the implementation of stateless uniform interface. So some technical wording there, but it's basically what I said is that when two systems speak different languages, it's a way for them to connect to each other that provides a standard. They both know that the request will need to be in JSON format and the response that they need is in JSON format. And then you have the common operations, a lot like database operations. And you have endpoints that specify like what type of like procedure function runs on that system. So it's a common language in between both. This is how they map. Mentioned before, create is your post, read is your get. That's why you mentioned both of those in the video. They are by far the two most common that you use. But you also do use put and delete. Like I mentioned, like this would be is if you're updating a database record or you're updating, you'll be doing this in your homework assignment whenever we release it, is to update a folder name in Box or even delete a file or folder name in your Box drive. So you do use these two. Now I use get from these APIs the most in data science just to pull down lots of new information or data that you saw from like Twitter APIs or some like your geocode APIs and things like that. Okay. So here's a little more information. If you notice this typing in these boxes, these are from ChatGPT, but they provide really like useful description of each. So the purpose of the get method is to retrieve data from the server, and then when a client sends a get request to a specific endpoint, the server responds with the requested data. So if you're just using it out of like a shell, it's as simple as that. It's a little more involved if you're using Python code, but it gives you a little bit of an example of how you might be able to get that information. Sometimes it's as simple as just the get command and then the URL behind it. So that's a super simple one that doesn't have any parameters, doesn't appear to have any like headers or anything like that. Just a straightforward get method. for that REST API. Right, so there's a put. The purpose of put is to update or replace existing data. When the client sends a put request along with the updated data, such as this, the server replaces the existing data at that endpoint. So say there's a put command, and maybe the user ID is user ID 123. It will put this information that you send, the data with the JSON or with the request to the endpoint that you send in JSON format. So for user 123, for the name, it'll put John Doe, and for the email, it'll do johndoe@example.com. So actually fairly similar to like an update statement that you use, like update value statement in SQL, is that you would say where ID is equal to 123, and the name equal to John Doe, and email equal to johndoe@example.com. So with post, we kind of talked about the purpose. So when a client sends a post request to a specific endpoint with the data to be created, in the request body, the server creates a new resource based on the provided data and returns a response indicating success. So if you wanted to create a completely new user named Jane Smith with janesmith@example.com, that would do that right there. And then usually they'd send you a response. It would say HTTP 200 would be okay. And then it'd send you some information about the new created user. So maybe it'd send you like the user ID, name Jane Smith. So it'll give you information that it completed successfully.
New resource, I'm thrown off by that word, resource. Creating a new resource. Is what's on the post, the name Jane Smith email, that concept's considered a new resource, or what's new?
It's like a new instance of the resource. So it's like technical language, but you can think of it as like creating a new record.
Okay, thank you.
So like a new resource, it's like a new resource object that creates like the new resource for that API.
So would that be the same as an insert statement for SQL?
The post would be an insert statement, yes.
Okay.
Correct. You'd be inserting a new record.
Okay.
So I always think of it, and it's like on the other side, there's like a database, and you're doing these operations, and then it puts it there, and then like the application like then knows to create the resource.
Got it.
I know it's not always like that, but I always think of it that way in like database terms. Perhaps on the other side, it calls like a function or something to create it. Like there can be a lot of things on the other side of the API, but I always think of it in database terms. Like in Box, like it created that new record, and then it creates the username with that. Usually there are databases behind systems, so I think in database terms, I always think in data terms in database, but that'd be like an insert. And then delete is like you'd say, if you wanted to delete user 123, you'd use that delete statement. So when a client sends a delete request to a specific endpoint, the server deletes that resource. So the resource, like a record, at that endpoint and returns a response indicating the success of the deletion. So the same as the post, it'll tell you like user 123 deleted. It'll always start with HTTP 200. That's always saying that the request was okay. If you get a different message than that, there's probably something happened. Like it's an invalid request, or sometimes the other server can be down and not accepting requests or whatever it might be.
I see it's case sensitive, correct? The CRUD method. It looks like it based on the word get, put, post, delete, or in capitalized.
No. Well, I think it probably depends on the design of the API
Okay.
and how it receives data and how it interprets it. So consider these are like shell examples. They'll be a little bit different when we do this in Python, but usually you're putting these in capital letters so that you differentiate this from the URL or the rest of the request. I think you could probably put them in, you could put like the delete input in lowercase, and then like your URLs in uppercase. Well, that won't always work, actually. I would tend for it to be case sensitive, just to be safe.
Okay.
But the commands maybe not quite as much. Depends on the programming language, probably. This is just like a shell that you're using for these commands. But if you're doing it in Python, you are going to put it as a parameter in the request library. We'll see an example of it, but I don't think it has to be, probably. But maybe just to be safe, you'd want to do all these case sensitive. Otherwise, if you did it it would give you an error. It wouldn't know what command you'd want to run. So if you do it in lowercase and it gives you an error, then probably need to do it in uppercase. Okay, REST API process. So I list 5 common steps for using a REST API. First one is reading the documentation. I've already been through a lot of that. It provides a ton of valuable information on how to engage with the resources and how to connect. Not only that, how to receive what information you're going to receive from it, but especially importantly, how to connect to it. So it's kind of like the rules of engagement. So what data you need to send, what headers, what parameters in the URL, like the query parameters you saw in the video, what resources or endpoints exist, what methods they use, and so forth. So second part is identifying the resources and methods and endpoints you need. That comes from the API documentation. 3 is accessing endpoints and adding parameters. We'll see that in action. That's more the programmatic part. Along with sending the request and receiving the response. That's probably the biggest part. That's what this chart is. So from whatever application it is, think of if you're writing Python code, that's an application. So you would send a request to the API. It goes to the source system. If it understands what you're sending to it, information, or I'll do that operation that you're asking, it sends it back to the API, and then you receive a response. Then step 5 is once you receive that response, it's going to be in JSON format. That last part is important for parsing the response, so being able to get the information you need out of it. Say sometimes you can just see it as a big text string, but especially if you're doing a get method and trying to get data and then you're moving it to a database, you're going to have to take that information and pull it out of the JSON and put it in like in a table, like a tabular structure, or maybe it's just getting the information you need out of it. So you need the latitude and longitude. You can parse through the JSON and get the latitude and longitude from it. So returns in JSON with the expectation, that's a format, and then you'll likely have to do something with it to make the output useful. Or be able to see output as needed. Okay. Using API documentation, so we covered this fairly thoroughly. I used Box as an example. We'll use this in our homework once it's assigned. There are all sorts of different types of endpoints. And then this is like, Box is a good example because it's a really well documented and designed portal. So it even has authorization endpoints where you get your authorization or developer tokens. That's important. I was telling everyone here that's important for security purposes, and like the API knows what person or entity is requesting the data. These are just a fraction of all of the API references there are. So comments, you can put comments on files, like collaborative type things, where you can get the list of collaborators on files and folders and stuff. That's why the ecosystems, we talked about the API ecosystems at the beginning, as I was doing some work for a client, and there are probably only 5 or 6 different things that you can do, but they continue to just expand their ecosystem of API because they want developers on their platform. So to make it really friendly and able to automate and exchange data. So they do this for clarity and understanding, of course, accelerating development, like I just talked about, making it easy for developers, more developers on their platforms, usually the better. They're oftentimes improving it, or they become loyal to the platforms. And they have error handling and troubleshooting. So that's something we didn't talk about. Sometimes there will be issues like, for whatever reason, like the resource doesn't exist. So you'd send it a folder number and the folder number doesn't exist in box. So it'll return you an error. Like they'll say that the request is okay, but it might send you some error in the body that says folder not found. And then you can handle the error from there. Some of them will be HTTP errors, though. Some of them will be things like invalid request or server unavailable or something like that. And then in your code, Python code, you can write code to be able to handle certain situations. So you'd say if HTTP code is equal to 300, then retry in 5 minutes or something like that. So oftentimes, they'll actually have some of that in their documentation to help you out. Sometimes, though, you end up creating these yourself for whatever application you're developing or integration you're developing. API endpoints and parameters. So we talked about REST API endpoints. These are the web URLs through which clients interact with a web service or application. The endpoints represent specific HTTP methods. So these are pretty good, like common API endpoint examples here. So you have your method and then your endpoint, like you're getting like the users from the system. So that's just like a really common endpoint for whether it's a system or a website. Is like they're going to have a number of users. You're going to be able to get that list of users from the server. Or this one's really common too. You just specify a specific identifier via parameter. So you'd say get users, and this may be user 123, and then it'll return like specific information about that user. So yeah, other things, posting user, creating new users is common in the system. Putting users, like updating users, getting all the products, putting new products in the system, deleting products out, and so forth. Ooh, what was I doing on this one? Let's see. So I was listing some steps here. I just have it a little bit out of line or off format here. So the first step in accessing the REST endpoint is defining the endpoint URL or the REST API. So it'd be this part right here. And then there are 2 optional things that you can do inside of the request. So oftentimes an endpoint will make parameters optional. They'll have like some default parameters or not need any parameters. That's common in sometimes there are get methods where you just get all the users or something like that. You don't really need any parameters where you're getting everything. Sometimes you don't need headers, although oftentimes in headers, you're giving them the access token, developer access token, and things like that. This is something that you'll do every time is send a method request, whether it's a get or a put or a delete. to specific endpoint in URL. So this one, URL, sometimes it's implicit, so we didn't have to specify it. On this one, I believe, sometimes it's implicit on the URL, whether it's a get, but sometimes in the code you'll have to tell it which method that it uses, because it can be the same endpoint, but one could be a delete user's endpoint, and then one could be a put user's endpoint.
I had a question. It may not be, I don't know if this is the right time to ask.
Go ahead.
So you were talking about like adding parameters, and you said, well, sometimes you don't need to, it'll just give you, data,
Yeah.
right? But how does time come into play? Like where like, maybe you have data from like years ago, well, you don't need that, maybe you just need it for this month. Like how does time get determined in parameters or get determined in any of this?
Oftentimes they'll give you like a to and from parameter,
Okay,
or like start, begin, and end, start or end parameter for the,
which you have to be the one
yeah.
telling it.
And those are often good parameters because you don't necessarily have to send that in the data, that you can just specify it and they'll give you a parameter and you're able to do it there.
Got it. Okay.
Those are often for like queries and stuff like that, or like a user ID that you put it up here in the URL. And then the body gives it like additional information to be able to command it to do whatever it needs to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. So in Python, once you do all this, you use the request. Oh, that's why we knew it was a get or a post, because you do request.post or request.get. So in Python, you have the library request. That is what helps you connect your REST APIs. So we have the post request method. It uses the URL, and then you're using the JSON library to be able to turn these name value pairs into JSON to be able to use that as a data part of the request. And then your headers are this part that you also did in that dictionary with the name value pairs. So you're actually forming your own JSON here also, then using the request method and the JSON methods to be able to send that response.
What is dumpster?
Say this is a type of transformation of this payload that you created. Basically, it dumps it into
Okay, it means
dumps it
to
into
put onto
JSON.
something. Okay, not
Yep.
delete it. That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
And then if this is successful, or even if it's not successful, it returns you a response. And then if the status code is equal to 200, that's an interesting way to do it. It'll be successful, then print the entire JSON response. Otherwise, there's an error. And then usually there's a status code that goes along with it to tell you which error was. So we're about to see this in action. So this is a parsing JSON responses. So I like this website, jsonparser.org, because instead of parsing it yourself, sometimes it can be difficult you can use the JSON library to do it in Python, but sometimes it can be kind of hard to see what the structure of it is. So often I'll take the response that I get in text, I'll put it into the parser, and then it'll start separating it out into parts. So like, this is similar to XML, if anybody's ever seen XML, maybe not, but you can see like, it's the first element of the array. So this can be like multiple parts. It could have like Bitcoin, Ethereum, like all the other cryptocurrencies. So there could be like multiple of these values in this array, but just in this one, it has one value. It's Bitcoin, or it's like this array of data. And then under just the general data elements, you can see how it maps. It's like name Bitcoin, symbol is equal to 0, rank is 1 for it being the cryptocurrency with the highest volume, age, even has a graphic in there that you can go look at, how many exchanges and markets it's in, and so forth. And then you can see also like their categories underneath of it. So there's like categories that's like nested within it. And then it's like all-time high, circulating supply, and so forth. And even a delta down here at the end. I'm not sure what those delta means, but they exist. And I put little marks on like how you could access this. So if you had a JSON object, you could access this by array1.name, and then it returned the value Bitcoin. Or you could do array1 categories name, and I think I meant that to be all-time high actually. So that would return you the all-time high.
Maybe all-time high dot name or no?
Oh, I think I copied and pasted that and just didn't change this last part to all-time high. Is what I meant.
So when they have a dot name, I'm just making sure I understand.
Yeah. So this would be like array1, and then you go to the categories,
Right.
like nested part, and then it'd be all-time high instead of name.
Okay.
So you can access those by the key. And so with JSON, you have to be a little bit careful because you'll have nested elements in here sometimes. So you really have to like unroll it for each entity. So say you have a state, and then the state has like 100 counties, or like 94 counties like Nebraska does, and then it has all the cities within the counties. So you'd have to like unroll it at the highest level first and start unrolling it at the successive levels. So it can take a lot to parse these things in JSON. Fortunately, we're just going to do it simply for now in our homework. I won't ask you to like parse anything huge because once we get to lecture 7, there are easier ways to do it in Azure than doing it programmatically. Once I found it out, like it changed my life because I spent like hundreds of hours like parsing these things out, like figuring out the structure and getting like all the small details, right? And these things. There's an easier way to do this in Azure. So just knowing it for now and being able to see it and being able to see it within, I won't make anybody hurt that much and hate it. So, and not the point of this class. It's to get it, a understanding of it at first and just start seeing it. Learning resources, I didn't quite finish all of these either, but there's this one of learning the API docs. It's really pretty good. Click on that. And not everybody's going to be able to see it, but I can go ahead and share that. I need to update that slide for everybody also. I'm going to drop it here into Slack because it's a really good guided example of like everything that we talked about in this class, from REST APIs, an overview of, and chapter. It's like a chapter book. So like using the API like a developer, documenting endpoints, and like pretty much everything library-based APIs, like using libraries to connect to REST APIs and stuff like that. All right, so that is it for the lecture. If everybody wants to take a 5-minute break, I'm going to try to make it shorter because I want to make sure everybody's set up to do the homework. I'm not going to assign the homework tonight, as I'm putting the final touches on it anyway, but I want to make sure everybody is set up with Azure and the things that we did on the first night. And then everybody tonight is connected to Postman and is able to access and use the Box API endpoints. So go ahead and take a really short break if you need one. I am going to start here at 8:15, and then we're going to cover it from top to bottom. All right, see everyone in a few minutes.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, we're back. It's 8:15. So what I'd like to do here is cover the class exercises from the first lecture that we had, and get started on the second lecture because you will need both to complete the homework that I'm gonna hand out, and I should be able to do that tomorrow afternoon. But first of all, just before I even hand out the homework, I want to make sure from class one that everyone was able to set up a free account on Azure. They were able to set up the ODSA resource group with the data factory resource underneath of it, and that they were able to get to Data Studio and then connect to the MySQL database. Is there anybody in class who wasn't able to do that? Yep, we have one. We have one live or two.
I wasn't able to,
Anybody?
sorry, I wasn't able to run the query. It said it was denied.
Yeah, that's okay. If it says you're denied, then you're able to access it. Because I didn't give everybody permission to the world
Okay.
.city schema. That was a trick that I put in there.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, there's one person in the class who will be able to access that. It's because they took the SQL class. So hopefully, eventually, this class, they go from SQL to this one, to data engineering, and you end up using the same database all the way through. This is the one I use for SQL class. But since I didn't have this group, we're setting it back up for you to use it. Okay, I'm gonna help the people here who are live with me first and take a look at their connection issue. If there's anybody on StreamYard who's having an issue, just go ahead and put that in Slack, and I'll take a look at it here in a minute. It seems like maybe everybody was able to get into Azure and do the resource group and set up Data Factory. It seems like the database was the one that we were stuck on last time. So I'm going to check everybody here and then anybody on Slack, and then we'll move to second. We'll move to the exercises for the second lecture. So I'm going to check it out just 1 minute. I'll put it on mute.
See, I did 4 and still take 4 numbers. Off or
Server group? Yeah, leave all the other ones the way they are, and also change that one. You'll have to install the MySQL. Yeah, you have to install the MySQL extension first. So if you go over here and you type in MySQL and MySQL, install that first and then try it. Almost there. Oh, first it's doing that to do. If you do that with my SQL connection and enter all the other information in there using your username and then the password, and it should work okay. I'm gonna get everybody started on the other one. I'll keep it up there for a second. Seems like everyone else is connected. We are just finished getting everyone connected here. So halfway to having everything that we need for the rest of the class. And then we're going to work on the exercises for REST APIs so you can get more hands-on experience there. And I'm not muted this time, so that's good. Okay, just 1 minute here. Say, Charity, are you? Did you get all the information you needed?
Okay, I think we were good.
See? Oh yeah, if you expand databases. It looks like you are. You should have a database in there with, yeah. Okay. So everybody is good with everything that we did on the first night getting set up. It looks like everyone's able to set up resource group, resources, connect to MySQL database. All right. So I'll assume that, and now going forward, unless I hear anything else.
Just to clarify, I did not get the Santo whatever analysis tool installed, right?
What was that? Say that one more time.
We did not get the other tool.
Oh, Synapse Analytics.
Yeah.
That's okay, because I was telling the group here.
I just wanted
is that
to
I'll
make
that-
sure that wasn't one of your expectations. Okay, thanks.
Yep, nope. I'll make that part of the homework to install the rest of the resource groups, because that one takes a few more options than the Data Factory did. So I'll guide you. I'll provide a guide in the homework for the steps to take on that. Okay. So for the class exercises tonight, and have everyone install the Postman app first. So you can go to postman.com and downloads. They will have there will be download for all of the different types of like easy and effective way. So you'd be able to do collections, which is basically like you call this box API, and then you could view all the endpoints, and you can easily see the methods. Somewhere around here, I know that there's a download link for the different operating systems out right here, not your OS, download for Mac or Linux. So for your Mac, you may have to know if your processor is Intel or an Apple processor.
So it does not support it for on the Mac. What's that?
So we can probably do the other one.
The Intel chip one.
Yeah.
Yeah, try if one of them doesn't work for you with the Mac, try the other one.
So I can mess that too.
And then once you're able to install it, it should bring it up on my computer.
Yours.
Yeah, what it looks like after you are able to install it. Is that on? Mr. Sandman.
Oh, it's Sandman.
No, Mr. Postman. It's a close. So
Did you say we need to
Thank you.
create an account too after downloading the app?
yeah, I think it asked you like mine. I created one under my email account. I use this a lot, Postman a lot. It's actually my first step once I start looking up API documentation to like get a feel for it instead of just writing a bunch of code. Because in here you can create your own collection, and then easily like do an endpoint, put some data in the body to tell it what to do, and then see it in action. As you're doing this, the next step will be to set up a Box account. Well, in Postman, what you can do, just to know that it works before we set up a Box account, is you can create a new collection, and if you view more templates, there's a REST API basics that will give you like a few REST APIs just to test on or just to get to know it. So it's kind of like the hello world for REST APIs. And then it'll create a collection like this. And then you can send, request. It tells me that it was successful with 351 milliseconds. And here's the response. It says you made a GET request. Congratulations. And they had a few things in the headers, but or there's a post and then there's an update. So the put is like an update, it has like an ID equal to 1, so it has a parameter. And then you run it and it says you need to put request to update ID 1 with the following data. You can even put your name in there if you wanted to. But you would, yeah. Let's see, in the body. What response this does. I don't want to edit that there. Should let me edit the body of that. Oh, probably because that's the response down there, not the body. Okay, so here we go. So I add my name. And this is in the data that I'm about to send, the body of the request or the data. Hit send. And then it says you made a put request. And then it has my name in it because that's what I told it to send or to update on ID 1. So pretty neat. That's like a pretty nice like introductory like set of APIs. Has everybody been able to install Postman?
Yes, but under the collection, I'm not seeing those boxes yet.
Yeah, but you aren't seeing this. Oh, the box API, I haven't taken you through it yet. This is actually a file that I'll give you to get started. So mine looks different because I put more collections in there. If you're able to do the REST API, add that for now, that's all they. If I don't hear anything, I will assume so. Unless otherwise, if not, later you can still put it in Slack and I'll get to you.
Are you wanting us also to do the box thing?
Yeah, so we're gonna do Box. So the next step is to set up a Box account.
Because when I started, it says create a free business trial account, but it doesn't say teams or individual. It's student account.
But they didn't give you that option, the
No.
teams and individual.
Create this trial.
So when you go to that install or set or the create a new account page, you'll want to select the individual instead of the business one because it shows that those are all paid. And then underneath of that, there will be the free account to set up.
Did you attach the instructions?
It's on the slides.
Yeah.
It's
So under that, you'll select the free account. And once you do that, you can create a new folder in your home named ODSA. So actually, I was working on this earlier, so I can just call it ODSA. Once everybody's to that step, let me know. And what you'll notice when you click on this folder, you'll get a folder number, and we'll end up using that with the APIs. Once everybody's get to that step, let me know.
Who's thinking? No, it's just like, but also my
Connection's kinda slow.
StreamYard, yeah, my StreamYard like just came off too. It's just like, I don't know. All right, I'm gonna be off StreamYard. It's gonna make sense. Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, I'm just trying to, yeah.
You should be able to connect it with a Google account.
Yeah, but it's just thinking. I mean, it's not. It's just. It's true. Oh, it is. Right? It's not working.
Okay.
I mean, it's just like, oh, yes. We don't have to add you, right? The additional people.
Nope.
So, okay. Yeah, that's-
I have that song stuck in my head.
Sorry.
Could be worse.
Yes.
That's why I always tell my girls when I hear something catchy, as long as I don't hate it, I'm like, it could be worse. That's been how I get through the music that my girls listen to.
So when I click apps in my apps, it says to create a new enter an app link. Where would I enter that app?
Yep. So on the next step, sign up for a Box API developer account. I think you can go here and do developer.box.com. Oop. Then you can go to Dev Console.
We're not seeing that.
There's some instructions here. There is a little video on how to get your API key, but I can take you here pretty fast. If you do that to developers.box.com, and then you click, what was it, go to development.
Jeremy, can you share your screen with us?
Like go to the developer console around here somewhere.
Hey, Jeremy, we can't see your screen.
I think I'm already logged in. If you do that, that'll take you to the developers console where you can create a new app. I think Charity, that's where you're at.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like
Hey, Jeremy.
Oh, you guys can't see the screen? Yeah.
Right.
Well, it shows on StreamYard. Is it just slow and black or?
No, we're seeing the class
East-
exercise.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's all right.
You focused on that one.
That's not what it's. Yeah. Okay. Screen. That's weird. It's showing me different on the StreamYard actually this time. Usually I could tell. Does everybody see the Box developer page here?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Is everybody to this point right now? You signed up for a Box account,
yeah.
and then you're able to find like the developer console.
How did you get to the
Because the
developer?
next step we're going to do is get an API key, a developer key for it. That way, the Box API is like you've signed up for an account, they know who's using their APIs, and so like you don't abuse one, you don't abuse it, and two, for security reasons. So now what you can do when you're here is create a new app, what they call an app. This is kind of like, the REST API where you're creating an app and then connecting to their box apps. What I did was a custom app, and then I just entered ODSA here. And then I did the purpose. I've set it as automation. They just want to know. It doesn't make that much of a difference. And who's building this app? We are. This class is. And that's how I created it. You can see I said your contact email that you signed up with.
What authentication did you use on that app?
Used OAuth 2. That's important to note also. So yeah, it has the purpose in there. You can develop your tokens and your client ID. I'm not too worried about anybody seeing that one. They do have a redirect URI. They pretty much set it all up for you. Okay, yep, user authentication is OAuth 2. That's usually the standard for security. It's one of the more secure protocols. It is like public-private key, user keys with it. It can be a little bit harder sometimes to configure, but once you get used to it, or you use something like Postman, if you use Postman, what's really nifty about the Box API is that it can tell what API you read some of that information. Authorization information, and then once you do that, one of the neat things after you're able to get a request that works, if you click over here with the 2 arrows and slashes, you can get code for it. And then you can get the Python version of it right here. So you can put it in Python code or any number of other languages, or they have even PowerShell, shell, either shell or programming language or curl. So one thing I want to do before everybody goes, I want to give you the Box API collection that I've created to be able to get you started. And it'll give you an examples, and hopefully you'll be able to use your access token and be able to do some of these methods on it. See, we're running short of time though. So I am going to put this, I've exported, you can export these collections out of Postman and then you import it. It's a JSON file, just like we learned about. And then when you do, it should show this collection. So I'm going to drop that file in here. Into, I put that in Slack. I'm kind of hurrying through the end of this to try to get to it. So if anybody has questions, let me know. I put that JSON file in Slack. And if you download this file, we'll actually drag this over. Oops, it's not there. How do I download it? Oh yeah, there's the download. Okay. So once you have that file, you can go up here to File Import. And then you select that file that you downloaded. So if I go to my download folder or wherever yours might be, downloads. That's where mine is. You can drag and drop it.
All right.
Got it?
Victory. I don't know what it's today. I can't even call it.
I do something like that when I like solve a problem. That pumps me up. I don't even know if I do advanced, but I know I have before. Okay, so if you pull that file in, it'll say box. Well, you won't have a box API collection that already exists. I'm just going to import a copy and it created copy key for me. It should create, what yours should create is this box API collection right here. And I put a couple different methods in here. Actually put 2 different methods in here. One's a put for an email link. You aren't going to be able to see this directly, but you'll notice you have the API endpoint. It's a put. You have a parameter, that's your folder number, and then you could run this. And then what it should, it says 401 on authorized. That's one of your error codes. So can use a saved I have a saved authorization. If you run it, you should ask for an authorization. And then you could enter your credentials, and then it'll bring you back your token. That's what's really cool. Instead of having to get your token out of there, like Postman knows it's the Box API. So it's like Box uses OAuth 2.0. So we'll redirect you there and get it so you can start to use that API collection. So Postman like takes a bunch of the work out of like having to like go get your key and then put that in Python code and then like figure out all the code that you need to write to be able to do each request. And then on top of that, like I showed, once you get one request working, you can go over to the code icon and then just copy and paste it out of there and you have working Python code.
Is the numbers in are those unique to yours? As it is like unique to me, then they're different.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That'll be the folder that you created in Box.
Okay.
In that home. If you click on it, it will be something like it will list that number, and that's like a unique folder number in Box. Okay. I'm not sure what that crazy string is. Oops, that's actually not the one I'm looking for. That's a different Box folder I have. let's just go to app.box.com. Oh, you know what? That's, yeah. Then you have this folder you created. And then when you click on it, it shows folder and then a number. That's the number that you'll use.
Oh,
I created we all created, or I created the ODSA folder and had you do it too. You click on it, it shows the number.
oh, okay.
And then you use that number as a parameter in the API call
Oh,
to be able to do operations to that folder. And we crammed a lot into one night, for sure. Everybody else stay online. Here for any questions. If you have to know, by all means. And I will,
Yeah.
I think that's most of it, but if it's not, I will go through the rest of it and then you'll be able to see it on the video. Do we have anything else here? Let me see.
Make sure it's not.
Postman, importing that JSON file. What you can do then is take that Python code. Oop.
Okay, then la derecha. Entonces debería aquí de este lado. No, es aquí.
John, can you see my screen now? Is it still on? Is it on back on the class exercise?
Yeah.
Okay. That might be from just a little bit earlier. I flew through things there at the end. So what you can do in Data Studio, if you aren't on, you can catch us at the end of the video, is not only out of Data Studio, you can also do Python notebooks. And I don't know if anybody, did you learn about Python notebooks in your Python class?
Yeah,
Like Jupyter notebooks?
Yeah.
You can do Jupyter notebooks here, so you can open a new Jupyter notebook. This is like a collection of Jupyter notebooks, and then you can even have a README. But then I created its own Jupyter notebook. I copied and pasted that the Python code out of it. If you hit, I selected the kernel Python 3. And if you don't have this installed, what it will do is install the newest version of Python 3 for you on your machine. But then once it does, then you can run all this Python code from your Azure Data Studio application. Did that work? Did it run it? Should have.
When I run mine, it says not found, error, status below
Oh, out of
Postman.
when you're in another Postman? Okay. I am not sure why that Python code's not working in the out of Data Studio at the moment, but it was working for me earlier, and you can copy and paste the code and run it there. That'll be the last part of the exercise. Let me poke down. Terry.
I don't know if I have to work.
I think it might be.
Valid parameters. It says that valid parameters invalid. So if you go back to your box account, make sure that's.
Yeah, this is where I'm looking at some first. Yeah. Okay, the same.
Just make sure.
I'm just gonna look at one of our repositories. Oh, no, wait. Like, okay.
I think it might be the reverse.
Oh, have you created an ODSA folder in there yet? I don't think that's anything now. Let's just try to create a new folder. You call it ODSA. If you talk to you. It almost seems like with that error message, you can find the folder that ID that you gave it. So that's what's good about the REST API. If it works, it'll tell you it's successful, but then it'll give you an error message. Like, could not find it. So try to copy
Yeah, I
and
know.
paste that number.
I know where they're not. I don't know why. That's-
Just the number.
Yeah, just the number. Yeah,
Did you hear me?
Yeah.
When it
I'm
allowed
with
me it allowed me to connect to a series of Jupyter notebooks I have out there. When I tried to open up one, it did the thing where it's now trying to install all times, several different types of connectors and stuff like that, so that I can open them up. So just so everybody knows that they might see Visual Studio trying to do that.
Oh, like you had them created from before and then tried to run it and it asked you to download a connector or it
Yeah.
asked you to download some extensions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might have to do that. And if you created, I don't know what distribution of Python you used or if you use like base Python to do it, you may have to like install some libraries too.
That's also, there's like 3
be aware.
libraries, and the Jupyter is trying to reinstall Jupyter for this and everything else. So anyway, it's working on it. It's still running, but it's doing it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it might take a little bit of work in installing some extensions to do that, but that's a good call. Sorry, James, I have to send you this link. I got to helping a couple other people. Hold on 1 second. Download Azure Data Studio. This one's a little bit better link to install Data Studio if everyone hasn't done that. I'll put that in our channel. This one takes you directly to Data Studio. So part of the assignment that I will do will just expand on the Box API and have you do different things with files or like creating folders and doing shared links and getting information and stuff from it. So 2 parts is installing the rest of the resources from homework 1, and then homework 2 will be just a little more work on the Box API and then running the Python code. And that will give you some more direction on some of the things that you need to fill out for like Synapse Analytics. And then I'll just have you take like little screenshots of having it that you had it installed, that you're able to install it.
I'm gonna go ahead and make instructions.
It's not too bad. I'll lay it out, and it's not too bad to install those resources. I just took it for granted. Synapse Analytics one. With that one, it installs Data Lake. And what else did I have installed? What other services? That's almost everything.
Should we save them on our cold box
It's his.
or automatically save?
Yeah.
Automatically.
Yeah, the collection. Well, if you update one of the collections, if you add one to here, it does automatically save. Yep. So any change you make inside of Postman, it'll automatically save it. Saves it inside of the collection. There's other neat stuff that you can do in here, like all these public APIs and trending APIs. This is a really good tool. You can develop your own APIs, which we'll briefly talk about at the end when we talk about deploying data science models like AI or machine learning models. It's basically you end up creating your own service so that people can send data to the model and it responds back. That's what the API, the AI models really are that like Google has, is that you'll like send it an image and it'll classify, it'll return like information on how it classifies it, or you send it text, like something in Spanish, and then you tell it to return it in English, and then it'll return it in English. It's like giving the computer directions, kind of like computer programming. But really, they're like AI models underneath of it, and you send it the information, and it processes it, and then returns the response.
One of the examples we had when we were doing the query, we had like select all from world.
Yep.
City. Ours, we don't have the data for it. We don't
Yeah, it doesn't work for you.
Okay.
It gives you an error and says access,
Okay.
and you didn't have access for it. It's a trick. It worked. Yes.
If because we figured it out, all right.
No, it works because you're able to log in and then run that code, and then it tells you access denied, which is okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool question. Does anybody else have questions? I didn't want to take away from
I think there are a couple. Yeah, there are a couple people still online, but I don't see nobody's really posting too much in Slack. I had 1 or 2 questions in Slack.
Okay. The reason earlier you had shown like these Jupyter Notebook on the box thing.
Yeah.
So when I tried to upload a Jupyter notebook, it doesn't let me, even though I have repositories.
Oh, you had it, so you had an existing Jupyter notebook. So what John was saying is that you might have to install some extensions for it
On the Jupyter.
within Data Studio to be able to run like an old Jupyter notebook. That's cool that you guys use Jupyter notebooks. I didn't know if you just use like some IDE or not, but that's good to use Jupyter notebooks because you would use them a lot in data science. And you did you do that for the last class, the modeling class? Yeah. Because then you can break down like each steps of your model building.
They use it last class, well, besides machine learning, and machine modeling, the other one prior to that. Thomas?
Hey, Jeremy, could you pop over to the Python code again?
What was it?
Yeah. Show you how to get to it in Postman. Yeah. So for like any one of the endpoints in these collections, you can go over here to the two greater less than sign with the / in between, and that will give you, it says code, and it'll give you the code. There will be a number of options in here, but one of them will be using the Python request library, and then it gives you the code for that. I believe I had to install the Python request library inside of here because it will install their latest Python, but it has an option in here. How did I do that? Same pay able to earn.
No, I'm not able to find the extension for this.
Let me see.
No.
When you try to run your first Python script, it tries to download the extensions. So if you click the
Yeah,
run
that's
button,
what I was thinking. Yeah, click the run button, and I think it asks you.
Okay, so we're
You just want to give me an idea. I'm putting in the homework.
go on.
See charity.
Oh, you need to open.
And just to note that you can also create SQL.
So I have to create a new
Jupyter notebooks,
notebook,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Oh, I got it. So if they, without a new level, you could write new level quarter. No. This is no.
I'll save it. There's fine. Create. And then once I created that Jupyter notebook, I added a notebook inside of it. Add a section. But they add sections within Jupyter notebooks. And then you have that Python that notebook or the section inside of the Python notebook. In there should be the bad code.
It does look weird though. I'm here compared to. Yeah. ¿Cómo te la tarea?
It's something wrong. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say the video messaging.
Oh,
So like, and I forgot, so I messaged like, hey, I heard this about
Mom mandó el grado del examen. That's it. And I'm like,
Oh, that's it. I added a section.
but I
Then I added a Python notebook, and that's where you can create the code. Then you change your kernel to Python 3.
No,
you can run code from there.
We got to figure that out.
You got it?
I think so.
Let me check this out. I should do a dance for everybody being able to get there.
Yeah.
That's a lot tonight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're able to. Yeah, once you ran it, then it asked you to install Python, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Python, and 2 other ones. Yeah, Jupyter, and there was something else.
I feel as though when I ran the code out of Postman, I had to install requests, the request library.
Hmm.
And I forgot how to do that in here.
Well, once you've done it once and then you don't use it again, you kind of. But, oh yeah, mine's still fine. It feels weird. I feel like I'm cheating on people. You would work. You're less attractive. That's right. Pretty cool. Got it. It was ridiculous today. Like, I went and installed Jupyter. I'm sure. Yeah. Going to a grandbaby who I took away for pacifier. Day 2.
That's the hardest when you take away their pacifier. Those days are hard.
So hard. Not only that, my
The
husband.
diaper and
Oh
pacifier.
yeah, my husband made a mistake, and I don't know why. This was not consulted with me. I need to ask you a question about men and why he did it. We took wallpaper, so we're moving our kids from our master room, and we're moving into their our obviously. My husband's like, oh well, I'm gonna take off wallpaper. I'll put new wallpaper. Not again, not consulted with me. Well, I think like I've been sick, so he was saying I was sick. And then he's like, I think Big G was like, oh, I should have looked into about asbestos. And I'm like, you're on day 2 taking wallpaper. What are you trying to tell me? He's like, yeah, because I have to sleep with that sick. Okay, so I'm like, wait, I'm so sick. Yeah. So then, they're in a portable bed, right? We have 3 kids, all 5 and under. And day 1, my daughter, like, just gets hurt all through here, like this bruise, lip is busted up because inflatable bed, what it doesn't do, bounce, so she bounced off. And so, that was, yeah, so long story short, we added that onto a milk pacifier, and then obviously she's under the sleeping pattern. Yeah, so, and I'm still trying to understand, like, what are we gonna do? He's like, I'm getting it figured out. So he's like doing something to like cover the whole wall at this point. So there isn't any asbestos like, I don't know, I'm like, I don't know. It's like, you didn't have to do any, nobody asked you to do anything cosmetic.
Was he bored?
He
You did
could have
something.
cleaned, he could have cleaned, because I was halfway dead, not cleaning for 4 or 5 days. I don't know, my husband has very great intentions. Very great intentions. Just follow through, love her to death. Follow through though, I'm like, if you would have seen that there already was like questionable stuff coming out of there, I would have just stopped immediately. So, yeah.
That's where everyone's been exposed,
Yeah, that's the other thing,
possibly.
I mean, yeah. Yesterday she fell also. She didn't learn from the first time. She fell because my cousin, she wanted him in the bed, because of course she didn't want to break out, even though my kids were there. So he sat down, and the moment he sat down, she also jumped out of the medical bed. And I'm like, you knew this was gonna happen. Like, the moment you sat down, because you're heavier, you see her flying out of the bed. I'm like, oh gosh.
See, I'm on the other side, I'm like the mom aunt, so my sister is gonna start, because right now, my nephew sleeps with them in the same room. because
Oh,
his
no.
crib- He has his crib, but it's in the same room. And so.
At 6 months, I took that privilege away.
So she's getting ready to like get him in his own room now, and I was like, you're so.
It's hard.
Yeah,
We get them older, it's hard.
it's like a mama's boy too, so.
Did you have an issue?
What's
With
that?
your kids, like, when did you stop having them sleep in your bed? Or in your room?
My 5-year-old still sleeps with me sometimes.
Oh, I don't know how. None of my
He
kids.
mostly sleeps in her room, but
6 months. 6 months. Cried it out, I figured it out.
my oldest is probably 4. Yeah.
I cannot. I like to sleep.
We just wanted to sleep. Well, she'd get all upset when she's in bed sleeping, so we're just like, oh, it's easier to put her in with us.
Yeah. It's harder to remove that though, once I got that custom. Like, there is, that's what it is.
I don't know how we got her to sleep in her own bed, but she's 15 now, but not the
Well,
best sleeper. She's like not the best sleeper, but so she's just kind of like that.
No, I get that. No, my kids know. And it's not like I mind that they're, I just like, respect your boundaries, my dude. Like, seriously, like, I want sleep.
I get
want
it though,
sleep.
getting them to sleep in their own room.
Well, I tell them, you don't want angry mama. Mama's already gets like triggered by you saying like doing things you're not supposed to, and then you have no sleeping to add to it. No, like, I'm doing you the favor. So, anyway,
I think my sister's like her.
I hope you're not here too late.
No, I'm just about to shut it down here. I see one person online.
Okay, we'll see you on Monday, right?
Yep, I'll send out homework here tomorrow.
Okay.
I think we're ready. We covered a lot though. It was awesome today.
Yeah, that was good. It was good. I hope.
Yeah.
I didn't get all
See you Monday. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. All right. So this ends this class in the Data Science Academy for the engineering path. It's class 2, role of APIs in data science, with me, Jeremy Bergman, the instructor for the class. Our next class, we will be moving back over to Azure to talk about cloud storage and databases, which includes data lakes and the SQL and NoSQL databases that can be set up in Azure. Until then, I'm Jeremy Bergman, and we will see you then on Monday, next Monday.